On July 14th, 2018, I decided to make a trip, just a road trip, a drive out west to the Columbia Icefields to check up on the Athabasca Glacier to see how far it has receded. I left Red Deer around noon. Before I left town, I drove along Ross Street to have a look and see who was there listening to musicians on the platform, and what friends were sitting listening to Randy Bolton, who is one of Red Deer's chanteuses, a very brilliant singer, beautiful voice. Once in a while, these musicians are spontaneously accompanied by a piano player. It was plus 23 degrees, and so it was the perfect day to go for a drive, heading west on Highway 11. Typical farms, you can see them along the road, and canola is starting to bloom. So lots of fields of yellow canola. You can take side roads. You can go up a township road if you're heading a township road heading east and west, or a range road heading north or south. In this particular case, Range Road 30 is what you were just looking at. There's a look down a typical country road. This is Range Road 30. Eventually you end up in Rocky Mountain House, a very historic community, a trading post in the old times when the native people of Canada would trade for furs and so on with people, white people that had the guns and had a market for pelts. These are various views of Rocky Mountain House. It's a fairly typical western town. Lots of box stores that you can see everywhere else. Heading further west along Highway 11, the road is a very well maintained highway because lots of traffic, tourist traffic in particular, takes that route. There are side roads one can take, and lots of opportunities for all-terrain vehicles to take a little side route. The highway, as I said, is very well maintained, and it's a real pleasure to drive on. It's very good surface, and of course lots of things to see along the way, mostly which are trees and rocks, little lakes, trees, some more rocks. And here's a very odd image of what looked almost like a curtain of trees, splitting an image in two. Eventually you reach historic Nordegg, a mining community, where is an excellent place to stop and get gasoline before heading into the mountains. Here's some various views of the museum there, and there's also a restaurant. Here's some of the mining equipment, the little engine that they use to pull the various carts loaded with coal and tools and what have you. Little Sullivan engine close up there. It's all very, very nicely set out. There's lots of old buildings still in Nordegg. Well, I should say lots of buildings. It's just a tiny little hamlet, but old buildings from the mining era. That mine is no longer operational, but vestiges are certainly there. The beautiful little church in Nordegg, and that's nestled in amongst the trees. So we certainly hope there's no fires coming in that direction. There are lots available for sale in Nordegg, and so anyone that wants to live a quiet sort of mountain retreat kind of lifestyle near Abraham Lake, Nordegg is certainly a lovely place to settle. People like to write their names on the guardrails along the road, while in places where people can pull over and stop. And so here are some looks, some views of some of this graffiti on these rails. I'm not sure all the names of the mountains along the way, but as you can see, they're all pretty magnificent, and there isn't really an awful lot of snow. The snow does increase a bit as we go up in altitude, as you shall see, but if you notice here, where really under normal circumstances there would still be some snow up on those mountains. I met a lovely family along the way. They were just taking a breather along the lake, and yeah, and I asked them to jump up and down, and I caught Neil up midair there, which was funny. He emailed me, and I sent him the photos this morning as I am working on finalizing this video and doing the narration. A weird thing happened. I had a wonderful narration done. It was very spontaneous, off the cuff, but for some strange reason it was working just fine yesterday and today that I'm re-recording this this little talk describing my trip out west. Yeah, the whole thing was compromised, and so I've got to redo the whole thing, which is what is the case right now. Here's a look at the typical signs that we see along the road, avalanche signs. Avalanches do occur in the wintertime, and rock slides, and so in certain areas one does have to pay attention. If a rock hits your roof, that could be a portent, so get the heck out of there. And of course, in the winter time, if there is danger of avalanches, the roads are closed. Once you get into the mountains, there are gates that are put across the road, and you cannot go any further. So sometimes it'll happen. People will have to wait for some hours while the Park Service clears the highway and takes care of what is left of the avalanche by blasting the snowpack with a 50 millimeter howitzer cannon that they haul around to certain locations where the avalanches are particularly dangerous. Not so much on the road going into national parks, but once you get into the parks, into Banff and Jasper and Yoho and so on in British Columbia, you will see these fences, if you will. They're like the booms that you see at frontiers, like the border, if you will, various countries. They have these booms that can be put down. This is Della, and Della is the friendly representative for the National Park Service who gladly takes your entrance fees and gives you brochures, whatever you require to make your visit to the national parks more entertaining, more interesting, and more enlightening overall. The Visitor Guide is an excellent publication that one receives upon paying the park entry fees. A 24-hour day pass is for a car and a single occupant is only $8.35, which I never resent paying because it helps to support our National Park Service. And our parks in Canada are very beautiful. They're very well maintained, and of course tourists flock, especially to our Rocky Mountains, to see the sights that I'm showing you here. This is the North Saskatchewan River, which runs parallel to Highway 11, and it's so gorgeous to see the light glinting off the water. There is this weird thing sitting on top of the mountain. I was looking west, heading up the Banff-Jasper Parkway, and there's this weird thing sitting on top of the rock. I have no idea what it is. It looks kind of like a sculpture of a man, really. I'm not sure. Anyway, more images of the gorgeous North Saskatchewan River as we are heading now north on the Jasper Park Banffway, and the river runs essentially along the highway. Here we are at Saskatchewan River Crossing, where you can choose to either go north to Jasper or south to Banff along the parkway, and so I chose to head north because it was my intent to go to the Athabasca Glacier, which lies north of Saskatchewan River Crossing. As you can see, we are getting higher in altitude. There's a sign which you will find from time to time indicating which mountain has what altitude. As we're going up towards the ice field, here I am looking down from a view place, and you can see how far down the highway already is, coming up to the ice field. this road heading north to the Icefields. And so you can see here how the roads have to be built in the mountains. You notice that it was sitting up above the ground. It's very interesting, the roads in the mountains, the kind of engineering marvels that they are, and how well, even in winter, they are maintained. It is actually quite a wonder, but it is part of what it is to live in Alberta. This rock is right at the top. Here we are at the Columbia Icefields, and that was the lodge. The lodge where visitors can get fleeced, or they can get rooms, and they can look out at the glacier and go on wonderful walks hither and thither. There's all kinds of paths, and you can see what the ground looks like where the glacier was. There's the parking lot, and lots of tourists. The ground is, of course, covered in rock and puddles here and there. There's this odd piece of wood that was just sitting there, and I thought, well, that looks very sculptural. It makes a lovely photograph, I think. And you know, the rocks are all kinds of interesting rocks. If you like rocks, I do. Another look at the lodge. There's a restaurant, and of course rooms to rent by the day, by the week. I don't know about by the hour. I don't think so. But you can see the terrain. This is all where the glacier, this Athabasca Glacier, dragged itself along and created, you know, all of these interesting patterns in the rocks, and yeah, and lots of debris. But it has receded quite a lot, that Athabasca Glacier. When I first came to Canada in 1960, we would visit from then on. Almost every summer we went to Jasper and Banff National Parks for a week or two of camping, my family and I. My mom and dad were very keen on camping with their children, and so we did that a lot. And of course, so I've watched this glacier recede from where it was touching the highway, and now it's way back. It's a long walk to get to where that glacier, you know, kind of ends. This is the North Saskatchewan River, which originates up in the Columbia Icefields, and here the river is going down what amounts to a hole, and that this entire river coming off the glaciers up there, the Columbia Icefield, it goes underneath this bridge into a chasm. That's the road looking east from the bridge. It was built, as you can see, in what appears to be 1938. And there is a look down into the canyon, which is very, very deep. All you can hear is the water rushing down there, but you can't see anything. You have to go for a bit of a hike in order to get down to the water level. But yeah, that's the North Saskatchewan River going down a hole right where that river is made. So you can see it there going down. Now I'm heading back to Red Deer, and another look here at Saskatchewan River crossing, where I bought a cup of coffee and an apple. Turnover cost me about $8.50. The coffee wasn't drinkable, and the apple turnover, I think it was somebody's imagination that it was an apple turnover, because there certainly wasn't much apple in it, and the whole thing was kind of soggy and not edible either. It's essentially a lump of white flour with a whiff of apple. I was very disappointed and ticked off that I was so ripped off. And then I'm wondering how many tourists get ripped off like that at that place, which is really not appropriate. You meet all kinds of people along the road, and there was a group of boys and their moms and dads from Texas that you watch there learning how to sluice for gold. But of course there's no gold. It's just you know, a wonderful opportunity for children to dip their hands in the water. Yeah, now here are some more views of Highway 11 heading back to Red Deer. So I'm driving east, and this is what I saw along the way as the light was starting to diminish. I mean, it's nearing you know, sunset time, This is around 10 o'clock in the evening, and somebody was chemtrailing. There were two actually. I couldn't catch the one that was to the west, but this one here was very visible, and it was very disturbing to see that going on in such a lovely place. Really, it makes so little sense to me, and who is spending all that money to buy these toxic chemicals to spray on us, or what's the purpose of that? Now, as you can see, there's still lots of light, and this is around about 10:30 in the evening. Now, of course, I'm shooting with a bit of a slower shutter speed to capture this, and I'm using a tripod now to make sure that my camera is good and steady. But you can see how beautifully the light starts to affect the scenery, and how the sky changes color. It's always along our highways in Canada, wherever there are say historic sites or locations, usually you will find information such as this posted, and you know, you could certainly stop the film at that point and read those signs. They certainly are clear enough. Here's looking at Abraham Lake, looking east, and you can see how the sky is starting to attain its sort of rosy kind of hue. It's actually quite lovely what starts to happen. Traffic really diminishes. There's hardly anybody left at this time on Highway 11. You might hear the odd car, but by now, you know, they're very, very infrequent. This particular highway isn't known for a great deal of heavy truck traffic, although we do see trucks on the road, but they tend to take the pass north, going through Hinton, Jasper, or to take the one that's Highway 1 south. But Highway 11, you don't see too many trucks on that road, so that's another reason it makes it such a pleasure to drive out west on Highway 11. Everything is now just becoming so peaceful and calm. There's not even any breeze. The water is absolutely still. And that is how we come to the end of my adventure to the Athabasca Glacier. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and please consider subscribing to the Stratosphericus channel and support my endeavors, which are not just here in tourist land but elsewhere. Okay, until adventure number 2, this is Gertjan signing off.